probably the first time you do this, you'll save anywhere from 10% to 30% on shipping. We'll go to FedEx and say, hey, look, we need to negotiate rates. This is just not competitive relative to what else we're receiving quotes wise. And we'll show them the rates we're being quoted from another carrier, whether it's LaserShip or someone else. And they'll just say no usually. And we'll say, okay, great, we're turning you off then. And we will just turn them off and we don't lose money.
Mehtab Bhogal is one of my favorite thinkers in all of e-commerce, a unique thinker who is approaching a lot of issues with real insight, clarity, and just absolute, as he would say, he's an absolute tactics monkey, just wants to make businesses work better. And therefore, as the co-founder of Karta Ventures, which has a majority stake in a couple of e-commerce brands and a minority stake in a whole bunch more, is seeing all kinds of great e-commerce wisdom being applied to his brands. And so he is on the show today to talk to you about how to do it for yours. This is going to be an incredibly practical, actionable episode. You will, in the middle of this episode, at some point, you will pause it and you will go do something that will save you money, make you more profitable. I promise you that. Like, I mean it. I promise you that. You're going to like it. So let's get in with Mehtab Bhogal, co-founder of Karta Ventures, right now. Hello, Mehtab. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I am delighted to do this. I actually am a bit embarrassed that we haven't done this so far. You and I have talked a few times in the past.
We've always nerded it out.
Yeah, I know. And I remember I hung up with you one time, immediately called Taylor Holiday and said, "Have you seen this Mehtab Bhogal fella? He's like 5 times smarter than most people that I come across." So yeah, nice. You've actually been humble about that when I've cited it in the past. You're like, I'm not sure I know anything. I just work hard and care about profitable businesses. So, but it's not true. You actually are smarter than the vast majority of people that I've been around. And I always feel like I hang up a conversation with you having learned a lot. So, so it's ridiculous that you haven't done this before. We'll have to make it a habit. So thanks for taking time.
I love the podcast. I think I've listened to like probably 80% of episodes.
That's really good. You just have to tell me which 20% you're skipping at some point. I'm always glad for that kind of feedback. Okay, give people the very quick overview before we get into your tweet-inspired list of how to make more money. So I mentioned it in the intro, but you are the co-founder of Karta Ventures. You guys have some majority stakes in some brands, a bunch of minority stakes in brands in the DTC space, but maybe just tell people a little bit more so they know kind of who you are, what you do, and also when they finish this episode and I tell them to go to kartaventures.com, that way they know who should be doing that.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been investing in D2C brands for, I've been investing in D2C brands for probably 6 or 7 years now. We've been investing together as Karta Ventures, my co-founder and I, for about 6 years. So we make flexible investments across both either control or minority equity, which means we don't control the company, as well as debt or equity or a combination of both. Lately, it's been a lot of the combination of both bucket. And we take pride in adding a lot of value very, very quickly, which is part of the reason I tweeted out what I did, because I think a lot of investors say they're value add, but I think we really want to show how deep we go and how tactical we are relative to most equity investors.
You mentioned while we were chatting a second ago that like your co-founder will get on a plane and help you cut your OpEx by 30% like in a week, right? Like something like that.
Yeah, he's the one who gets stuck with all the boring operational work. So he's implemented Lean at a handful of our companies. He goes on painful sourcing trips, etc. So most of what I'm telling you, I just stole straight from him. He's the smart one. I just kind of sit around and just repost what he says.
That is, I found drafting off of people smarter than me is a really good way to build a following. So
it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny though, because this actually is a nice segue into this because, I've mentioned in a few places recently that sort of like one of my least favorite pieces of advice in e-commerce right now is test everything. I actually think that people should have almost the exact opposite perspective, which is learn from smart people who have already done it, so you don't have to test everything. Testing everything is actually incredibly slow and costly, and really hard to arrive at good conclusions. And so when you see a list like you had tweeted the other day, that is now something we can sort of jump off from, and I will link the original tweet, although I think we'll go quite a bit beyond it. there's just like so much to learn that you shouldn't test. You should just go do. You should just stop what you're doing right now and you should go do it. Like I said
Totally.
in the intro, you should pause what you're doing, pause the episode at some point in this, and just go fix the things that we talk about. So let's see the first one. And in fact, it was this first one that really grabbed my attention. I'd never heard anybody say anything like it before. But you talked about how to cut expenses on shipping, and this is something I've really fascinated by. I think everybody is sort of annoyed at paying the prices that they have to pay to shipping carriers and e-commerce, but it's this part of the business that is it's to me has always felt inescapable. These gigantic companies that you're dealing with, USPS, FedEx, UPS, whatever, and you're trying to negotiate with them as this little nothing thing in their revenue pool. Even if you're a mid-sized e-commerce business, you're still such a small thing to them, and so it's always felt like a really hard thing to tell people, like, here's how you actually cut shipping expenses besides get big enough to be bi-coastal and ship to zone 3
Mhm.
instead of zone 5. So like, talk to me about this strategy you have for how to get price reductions with vendors and particularly with your shipping carriers.
Yeah, so we'll use shipping carriers as a good example. And we'll go through a handful of things tied to that. Yeah, so let's go through the shipping carriers first, actually. The big thing with vendors in general is that a lot of them will not take you seriously, unfortunately, unless you're willing to turn them off completely and step away from them. It's completely true with FedEx, completely true with UPS, especially over the last 3 years, where they're kind of in a position of power. It's changing a little bit over the last year, but since 2020, they've been a lot less friendly. And what we found is you have to turn them off, or you have to start moving volumes to a lot of the smaller carriers. Like there's a handful of them based out of Texas, like LaserShip, et cetera, that you can move some volume to, or you can turn FedEx off completely and use a gray hat service like ShipHaven to basically they have accounts that you can ship off of. So we use that whenever we want to cycle off of FedEx and get into negotiation mode. And unfortunately, this is what we found works best. And this is across a variety of geos. So one of our companies is based in California, another one's in Utah, and then we obviously have a handful of other ones that are more on the East Coast. And we've always found you just have to turn them off. Unfortunately, they just won't take you seriously any other way.
So
Um,
walk through the actual order of operations here. So step one, you
mhm.
literally go to your 3PL or like just stop shipping with a certain shipping carrier, right? So let's say it's
Yeah, I
FedEx.
mean, we'll go to FedEx and say, hey, look, we need to negotiate rates. This is just not competitive relative to what else we're receiving quotes wise, and we'll show them the rates we're being quoted from another carrier, whether it's LaserShip or someone else, and they'll just say no usually, and we'll say, okay, great, we're turning you off then, and we will just turn them off. And we don't lose money because we use ShipHaven, which basically beats their rates no matter what. It's a great hat service. We haven't had any issues using them in 4 or 5 years. I don't have any relationship with them, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, that's how we do it. So
Yeah, okay. And then once you do that, they're willing to say like, well, hold on, maybe we
the
can
rep
find
will
something that
come right
works.
back every time, 100% of the time, never fails. The rep comes right back. They're like, oh no, what can we do to win your business back? Blah blah blah, and just works every time with the shipping carriers. Unfortunately, I mean, like obviously I prefer not to do this all, but it's the only thing that works.
So incredibly actionable. I'm going to immediately turn around and reach out to my to some of my clients and just say like, go do this thing now because it is so awesome. Have you done this across the board with shipping carriers? Like,
Yeah,
or is it
probably we've probably done this like 20 or 30 times now. Um,
how much money do you think that has resulted in saving
oh, like
like
millions and
on
millions of
average?
dollars.
Really?
Oh, that's millions of dollars like total, but on average, I'd say probably the first time you do this, you'll save anywhere from 10% to 30% on shipping, and that depends if you integrate other. You should be integrating a lot of the smaller carriers too, like LaserShip. They're great; they totally work, and it depends on where you are geographically, because some of them will not service you. Like for example, DHL, LaserShip, and a few of these other guys that want to operate in some of the smaller states. So it does depend on
Yeah.
where you are, but it's definitely worth looking into. And if you just Google it, you'll find a bunch of them.
If you're working with a 3PL
Mhm.
to do this sort of thing, are you like doing that in concert with your 3PL at all, or are you just calling the shipping carrier directly?
But it depends on the 3PL and your relationship with the 3PL, and if you're using your own postage accounts or their postage accounts, etc. But the same concept applies across vendors in general. I found American vendors are better about this; like they don't need to be turned off usually, unless they are like a very strong monopoly or a larger company. That's where you typically have to do that. But if it's a smaller 3PL, they tend to be more reasonable around negotiations. Um, and I would really approach with 3PLs where we're more collaborative. So we'd work with them to say redesign packaging, et cetera, or just go and look at how they're picking and packing our products. Um, yeah.
Makes sense. Is what about let's take that out to that next level then, vendors in
Mhm.
general. You have this piece
Yes,
of
let's do it.
advice that you say just declare that you're going to pay them 3% less over the next 18 months. Like tell me like this is a bold move and I think a lot of people would feel nervous about doing this. I don't think you would, but tell me about this strategy.
Yeah, so there's no real downside to doing this. It works best if you can send it from someone kind of authoritative, like the CEO or the CFO. I like the CFO because everyone just assumes the CFO is kind of like, you know, tough. And it gives us someone to blame because usually like the CEO might be negotiating directly or working directly in product dev with say a manufacturer, right? So you could just kind of force that on the CFO and that way you don't torch the relationship. But just sending out an email to all of your vendors saying that you're now paying 3% less. And if anyone sends you an invoice without having, I guess, read that email, you just subtract 3% and send it back and just remit that amount of money and say, did you not read the email that we sent you? And this works probably it'll probably work with 85 to 90% of your vendors.
When you say it works, do you mean you have to get to the point where you just pay the 3% less? Like they won't actually uh,
Oh,
or will they most times will they just invoice you 3% less?
I'd say probably 60% of them will invoice you 3% less. The other ones will be surprised, but that's just their fault for not checking their email.
That's so funny. And I like the CFO move too. It totally makes sense. Everybody just expects the CFO is just like some numbers monster sitting in a corner somewhere trying to slash, whatever, the
Totally,
personality-less.
totally.
Like they don't, whatever. As a CEO, could be like, oh, I'm so sorry, my CFO is like really holding me to it. So
Yeah,
uh,
basically in any supply chain book, you'll see that they recommend separating out like the purchaser from the relationship of like from being the same person who negotiates, if that makes sense. So if your job was to be the person pulling the trigger on purchase orders, I want someone else who negotiates because you can't help but build a relationship with whoever you're working with on the other side, right?
yeah,
So
I
it just
remember
makes things easier.
this advice reminds me a little bit of I remember hearing Moise Ali say a long time ago, like everything is negotiable. It's way more negotiable than you think, and you just never try it. And you should negotiate everything you can, and
Mhm.
every 2 and 3% you could possibly get, you should take.
Yeah, the way
So
we look
yeah,
at it is just like a lot of suppliers will just declare a 3% price increase. So why not go the other way? I mean, I'll just declare a 3% decrease.
that's a
Why
great
not?
great way of framing it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. Anything else on the base time on the baseline, like sort of
with vendors.
vendor relationship stuff? Like
Totally.
you've got a note here about getting
Let's go into
FaceTime
it.
with people. Like I'm curious to hear you talk
Mhm.
about how that plays in and sort of um, anything else big picture with like actionable ways to reduce costs with vendors.
Yeah, totally. So a lot of D2C brands end up dealing with manufacturers that are overseas. I think it's important to keep in mind that other cultures are much more FaceTime heavy. And even in the US, there's still like you show up, they'll take you much more seriously. They'll be much more willing to negotiate than if you didn't show up. But overseas, that's probably like another 3 to 4 times as important. So I think actually going on trips to China, India, Vietnam, wherever you source from is really, really critical. And then remembering that there's like a bit of a big man culture in Asia, and this is pervasive across a bunch of countries there where people don't like it if you're and even in the US, right? Like people don't like it if they negotiate with you directly purely on cost. They'll feel like they lost. No one likes to feel like they lost a negotiation. What we found works better is saying, hey, let's work on a new product together that cuts out a lot of the unnecessary things that our customers don't care about and re-engineer it together even if you are essentially just beating them down on price. Just phrasing it differently tends to help a lot. Or even pushing for something like terms where they don't realize, like, they don't think of it the same way as just a pure cash discount, even though it functionally is, right? And really diving into the term side, I think understanding the financing structure of whoever you're negotiating against is really, really important. Keep in mind if you're an exporter, you have access to state subsidized financing almost 100% of the time. Pretty much every country offers some sort of state subsidized financing function for exporters. So in China, for example, the Sino-Share. In India, there's a bunch of subsidies available, and it's important just to take. It doesn't take too long, maybe a few hours, just to Google around and see what's available to them. And often the counterparty won't realize that their cost of financing is exponentially lower than yours. So if you're a D2C brand that's pretty small, let's say 5 to 20 million, you're probably paying for a debt that's not personally guaranteed. You're probably paying anywhere from I want to say 10% to 18% in interest rates, depending on, again, no PHE, depending on how large
Yeah.
you are, what your
Yeah.
balance sheet looks like.
Sounds about
They're
right.
paying way less than that. They're paying like, in some cases, they're paying like 3% or something, just because the state wants to subsidize exports so much, so heavily. So if you work with them around that, you can often find bigger price breaks that way around terms than just straight up cost.
So basically, you're bringing that to them, telling them that, and
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, can you finance this instead of me?" Basically, I'm going to pay a little bit less because you just have access to better rates than I do. I mean, how are you actually leveraging that bit of information into the negotiation?
Yeah, that's totally it. Or just getting them to do things like keep more inventory on hand because their cost of holding that inventory is much lower than yours, right? So you say, look, there's no risk for you because you're still holding the inventory. There's a little bit of risk. It's not like they're shipping it to you and you have it and they don't, right? So you say, hey, why don't you guys hold more inventory in stock? So that way there's less of a wait time between you placing a purchase order and getting your product still. So there's still that same net benefit, but they're just holding it on their balance sheet. If that makes sense.
Totally makes
Um,
sense. And then are you framing that at that point as this will help me grow, which will help me generate more business for you, and by sort of essentially, I mean, it's essentially a cash conversion cycle issue at that point,
mhm.
right? You're now being able to reduce your lead time, make smaller orders, and then say to them at the same time, like, this is going to help fund my business's growth. I'm therefore going to order more from you. It's just I need you to leverage your better terms than mine in order to make that happen. And now everybody
Yeah,
wins.
yeah, exactly. And most of the time, they're
Yeah.
totally willing. They just didn't understand that dynamic. And again, maybe a lot of brands don't understand the dynamic where it is cheaper for the vendor to hold the inventory on their books. So,
Yeah, it's also 100% true if you say those things. You know, it's like this is like such a fundamental pain point for e-commerce brands that like
and there's no
if
markup, right? Like
yeah, right.
for them, it's just the cost of whatever their inputs were. So say labor, material cogs, etc. For you, there's still the manufacturer markup, right? So like their cost, the baseline for what they're holding in inventory is lower too, plus the cost of financing. So
Yep.
it's a win-win.
Yep. All right, let's jump over to anything else you want to say about vendors. Let me just make sure to give you a chance. You've got
Yeah,
a
I
lot to
think
say. You get that.
most people they don't source nearly enough vendors. I think if I'm looking at one component, say packaging, I want to talk to 20 to 25 vendors. We'll probably start the list off with 50. And most brands will look at 5 to 8, which is just not enough. Like you need way, 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 way more to actually get somewhere. And then you need to make sure you're visiting, et cetera, getting good samples, blah, blah, blah. But you need to run a really big process and make sure you actually truly shop the vendor. Don't just contact 5 and then 3 can't do it, and then you're left with 2, and then you pick one that seemed kind of okay. Don't do that. You need to reach out to like 20.
How do you do that relative to the time cost of
Mm-hmm.
and how do you sort of weigh that back and forth? Like, I mean, this is one of those things where like if you can shave your unit economics at all or like help your cash conversion cycle, it's so fundamental to making the business work better in e-commerce that
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to spend a lot of time on something, it's one of the things worth spending a lot of time on. But do you think about, you know, we could talk later about running really lean and the idea of like shopping 20 vendors, like, and maybe I'm just thinking this is going to take more time than it has. I've certainly never shopped 20 vendors for something before, including when I was running a company, you know, like, but like, yeah, am I just thinking about that wrong? Is it not actually going to take that long, or is it
It
just
def-
time worth putting in?
no, it definitely takes a little while, but I think it's about coming up with a system that works, whatever your niche is. I'm not saying like you purely use Alibaba for sourcing, but if you were, you would just reach out to more people. And I would probably like we have a team that's in China, we have a team that's in India that does that. So our cost of labor on sourcing those additional vendors is much, much lower. So we have someone in China who's reaching out to say 20 vendors in China for packaging versus just one guy in the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That makes sense.
Oh, and the trick we've
But
learned there too, by the way, is often if you look up a larger company in your space, you can hire someone, and I'm not saying like a direct competitor, but someone just larger, kind of ancillary related. You can hire someone that works in their supply chain team or on their supply chain team as like a part-time consultant. And it's a very big 80/20 because you can also piggyback on some of the PO volume and kind of figure out how things work at a much, much better level because they know what kind of maximum discounts possible with specific vendors.
you heard it right here in the conversation. You should be considering offshoring talent in your e-commerce businesses because the value for all sides just makes so much sense. I do that with my friends at More Staffing. You can go to morenow.co/AF to work with them. That's who I staff my business with in the Philippines. You have heard Lara Guevara, the CEO of More Staffing, many times on this podcast, and I am always glad to put her up here because More Staffing is awesome. They find you incredibly high quality talent in the Philippines, people with deep e-commerce resumes who you can pay a high amount for relative to Philippines salaries, but much lower than you would pay for that same talent in the US, and find true killers for your e-commerce business. People who are awesome, really understand what they're doing, well beyond just thinking about virtual assistants and $5 an hour type Filipino hiring. So go do that right now. Go to morenow.co/AF if you want to begin to explore offshoring talent in the Philippines in your business. You'll find incredible, hardworking, ethical people. More staffing will help you do all of it, and they'll even give you a 1-year guarantee. So if that employee does not work out, they will restaff the employee within 1 year, although it is very, very rare. I've heard almost no examples of it from anybody I've sent to more staffing. But that's what you can do. Go check it out right now, morenow.co/AF. All right. Okay. Anything else on vendors? Anything else there? That's another great tip.
Let me just take a look at my little list here.
Yeah.
I'd say that's really it. That's probably
a lot.
80/20. Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll save you
that's a
6
lot.
to 7 figures a year, depending on your size, like immediately.
Yeah, it's so massive, and it will save you that. But then, of course, like if you think about this the way I do, like you're not just going to put that on the bottom line. What that allows you to do is now go acquire customers at a higher ROAS, or I mean a lower ROAS, excuse me, on your ads, whatever it is, and that allows you to generate more growth faster while just opening up more of your bottom line. I've really watched, I mean, maybe not with these particular tactics, but I have at least one brand that has like hammered away at their margins over time, a few different ways, including major product development overhauls, and then also just like negotiating with vendors and getting COGS down and making sure the product was still really good. None of this was at the cost of the quality of the product. And I mean, it's hard to really feel how important this is until you do it, and you realize that like every couple points of margin that you get at the level of unit economics just makes it so much easier to grow. A high margin is one of the cheat codes of e-commerce, running a high margin. And so yeah, if you can go make these things happen, it's just tremendously valuable in your business. But a lot of times people don't know where to start, so this is really practical. So okay, let's move more into my world.
Actually,
go ahead.
One more
please,
thing.
Please.
One more really good example is that I thought kind of broadly applicable and kind of cool. We had one company where the cardboard they were using was standard size for all of their shipping out. And using a bunch of edge crush tests, which are pretty easy, we were able to get our cardboard thickness down quite substantially and save a lot on cardboard. And cardboard for the company was some huge weird expenses, like half a percentage point or even a percentage point of revenue was going to cardboard. So that came down quite a bit. And again, floods right to the bottom line, just stuff like that, right? So working with your supplier to re-engineer the product so it makes more sense and cut out anything that's not value add for the customer. Because the customer only cares if the box arrives like looking okay. They don't care if it's, like a little bit thinner. It's not, no one's going to notice that or pay attention to it.
So good. So good. Okay. Yeah. People won't realize how much that half a point of margin matters until like you like model it on your P&L and you're like, whoa,
Totally.
that was $50,000 or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like, or much more, it's crazy. And then of course, if you actually do the multiple math on that at some point, right, the $50,000 times 6
disgusting.
or something like that, right? It's like a huge amount of money. Okay, let's move more into a world that I know a little bit better, which is the world of digital marketing. You this is another thing I jumped at with your original tweet because it's something I probably need to say. I probably just need to pre-schedule a monthly tweet about this. But it is the scourge of non-incremental branded search in your Google Ads account, which is happening right now in your Google Ads account, dear listener. Like it is definitely happening. And by definitely, I mean in 80+% of the Google Ads accounts that I look at. So talk through your insight here and then let's help people save some money on branded search.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page as far as our crusade against branded search. But the first thing I do is export the keywords that you're actually matching for. And you'll be disturbed. You'll look at it and you'll say, holy, I didn't believe this guy talking about branded search at first. And I exported it, looked at it, and now I want to gouge my eyes out.
Just really fast, just to be really clear, because this language is actually a little tricky. What you want to export is the search terms, not the keywords, right? Because the search terms is actually where you see what words people have searched to land on your ad. So keep going.
Yeah, exactly. So you see what they're actually searching for, and you just be really, really alarmed. It doesn't take long. It takes literally, I want to say, even if you don't know what you're doing, 15 minutes to do. And from there, I wouldn't bother running a really fancy incrementality test. I would just lower spend by 50%, just see what happens. And in most cases, probably nothing. And just see what happens over the course of 2 weeks. And my guess is probably nothing. And you'll just save a bunch of money.
I have, I think there are two elements of this strategy. So the first is many, if not most, folks have in their Google Ads accounts some version of a branded search campaign set up, right? Where it's like you're targeting branded keywords, and there's been a lot of ways to do this over time. Google Ads has changed a lot, but basically some version of branded search, right? So I'm wearing my Wander Club hat here. So if it was for the Wander Club, which is a client of mine, they it would be some search terms with the word the Wander Club or Wander Company or whatever, all the little variations that people misspell and mistype, right? Wonder Club, whatever. So all those trigger your ads, okay? And that's great. Go ahead and set that up, and maybe you run that at a really high ROAS. I'm just going to tell you right now, especially if you don't have real competitors really bidding hard against your brand terms, something like that, that should be running probably at least at a 15-1, at least, okay? If you even have it at all. I'm comfortable with running it as long as you're at some kind of ridiculous ROAS like that, right? But there's another thing that you're talking about here, which is that when you go and look at your actual like non-branded campaigns, right? People call them all kinds of things: generic search, categorical search, non-brand search, whatever, and then go export your search terms. What inevitably is happening almost all the time, you'll see like, oh, I got a 2-1 on this campaign or a 3-1. But when you go and actually export the search terms, what's happening, and in fact, you don't even have to really do an export. You just pull it up in the Google Ads dashboard. Just look up, it's under, I think, Insights search terms is where you see it. If you go pull that up, what you will inevitably see, if you have not been like sort of diligent about this, is that you will see some variation of these terms, right? So instead of the Wander Club, like I said, it'll be Wonder Club, and it's clearly somebody searching for your brand, but you didn't exclude it from your non-brand campaign, and that will be actually running at a 10-1, and all the rest of your categorical search will be running at a 0.5, and it'll come out to a blended average number that you see at your campaign dashboard level of a 2 or a 3 or whatever it is, right, depending on the volume. And so you have to go and exclude those search terms. And when you do this, there is like real money to be saved in your business. Like, again, thousands of dollars sometimes per month, both in branded search that you're overpaying for and in categorical search that is actually not performing. So it's just like a low ROAS campaign that you should be spending less money on, etc. And you can't see it. So that basic process gets you really far for just like marking out what is a complete and total non-valuable cost center in your business. Okay, so say more. Anything else that you want to
Yeah.
add to that?
The other big giveaway is in Northbeam. If you look at the average touch points to convert and time to convert, you'll see that it's much faster, and it's almost always just on desktop. That's because people are going from mobile to go purchase on desktop.
Yeah, that's
And you'll
right.
notice that it's really bad for any brand with a high number of average items per order, because people are more afraid of ordering something incorrectly on mobile, or like if you have a
Yep.
complex ordering process where there's a lot of customization, you'll see it way worse. And that's like a fun thing you can do in Northbeam. So
Yeah, that is makes a lot of sense. People definitely forget about that, like cross-device conversion thing. It's a real thing. The other way I manage this in an ongoing way, as somebody who's really not great in Google Ads, but who, I've spent some time in the past. I may have managed Google Ads at points, and and what I always say to like clients about this is like, I can't run your Google Ads, but I can definitely help you waste less money in your Google Ads. And so like I won't be the person to go scale an account for somebody, but just wasting less. And the other thing to do, the way I would just handle this is in your branded campaign, you just select search impression share as one of your columns. And as long as you're ranking for 90+% of the searches for your brand name, you're ranking for plenty of them. And then every day that I am still getting 90+% of the searches for my brand name, I just tick down my target CPA, or tick up my target ROAS, or tick down my target CPC. I don't really care how you bid it. And until you get down to the point where your search impression share gets below that. Because what that's doing, right, is telling you how often your ad is ranking relative to the search terms that you're targeting. And what I consistently see, and smarter Google people than me have more sophisticated ways of doing this, but what I consistently see is like, you start at like, okay, a $25 target CPA, 95% search impression share, right? You can get that down to $5 sometimes, and just keep going lower and lower and lower, and it's just hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars per week, depending on how big your brand is, sometimes per day, where it was just like Google just taking extra money from you. You did not need to pay that much for your CPA to rank for those terms, and you just march it down every single day. Really unsophisticated way to do it, but it works really, really great. And the other thing I would add to this same point is This is something that I think is a dead giveaway that your Google Ads agency is not doing a good job. Is if you're working with a Google Ads agency and there are lots of brand terms floating into search and categorical shopping campaigns, this is a very quick way to audit whether or not they actually care about your account or whether or not they're actually doing good work. Because this is so Google 101 that when a Google Ads agency is not like just again being diligent about handling this, some of them will even just have scripts that do it for you, that just make sure this happens. It for me is like pretty much grounds for firing them. It's just like, or at least for grounds for having a very hard conversation and saying, you owe me a bunch of money that you said you were not, that you said you were, keeping in campaign A versus campaign B, and you were overpaying for. So all of their reports are wrong if they've done this. So to me, it's a dead giveaway of a poorly managed Google Ads account. Okay. Anything else to add to that? That was a little bit of a tirade by me because I think it's
nothing on mine.
Right.
It's a good crusade to be fighting.
Yeah. It's just fast. Okay, merchandising and collection sort is another area that you want to talk about, and I love this point because it's something I hear people talk a lot about, but frankly, don't feel particularly educated on. And so, guide me, Mehtab. Tell me how to think about the value of how you sort your collections and what you're looking for and how you go do it.
So this is probably mostly applicable to anyone with a larger catalog. Say apparel is always like a classic winner here. The main thing is paying attention to which, say you're sending to collections off of ads, paying attention to how products are ranked and why they're ranked that way, and having some sort of logic. The gold standard is like gross profit per click from the collection level, which you used to be able to do with another layer on top of Google Ads, but it's changed now. Now it's way more complex to do in GA4, so you probably need a dev for that. But I actually wrote like a really detailed blog on how to do this step by step, totally free. But the goal is like,
okay, let's make sure to link that. So that merchandising blog post is in the show notes of this episode. So cool. Okay, so keep going.
Yeah, so basically you want to make sure you don't have really low converting products near the top. You don't want to have, if you're in apparel, you don't want to do something like rank a product with really limited size coverage up top, because it's super frustrating for the customer. If, say, you sell shoes and you only have size 6 left or something, you'll see like your efficiency with ads decline. You'll wonder why, and it's because you're sending people to a collection where the top few products, the size coverage is really limited, really bad. And again, you can expand this logic out to email, to the way your menu is structured. That's made a huge difference. And this is a very, very consistent way to increase AOV primarily, is what we've noticed. And again, you can expand the same logic to things like suggested products that show up, or other products that are linked within a certain product display page. And it's usually a really big lift. It takes maybe a few hours to do if you want to do it a relatively unsophisticated way by looking at something like, maybe page value or some other proxy. But most of the time we come up with, I don't want to call it like an algorithm or anything, just like a simple formula, depending on the brand and kind of what we found works. It's really easy to A/B test, which is really nice. In Shopify, you can duplicate a collection and just change the sort order for one of them and just send some traffic to one LP, not LP, sorry, one, well, it is an LP, but some traffic to one collection, and then the other one to the other one, and doesn't take any dev work. Super, super simple. Don't need any tools even. You can just do that in Facebook if you want, and you'll have results fairly quickly.
That is so helpful. I think the step-by-step guide will be really useful to people. Make sure to follow up on that. You should put an email address gating on that before I put this in the show notes, Mehtab, and start building your list, because I would gladly give you an email address to get that piece of content. It's something I hear a lot about, but is the details that you're giving even there are like more than I hear from a lot of people a lot of the time, right? So, if I think about the notion of like how to actually go, what to target, how to think about split testing it, all those kinds of things, I think it's hard to. It sounds great, like get your highest profit per product products at the top, but like, okay, well, how do I actually go about doing that? So. Okay, let's see. We got a lot of list of help here for people. Let's jump to offshoring. And this is something you and I have I think both, again, been fairly public about being valuable. I'm a big fan of this. Talk to me about how you think about offshoring. I would say, to frame this up a little bit, being able to run with a lean OpEx is one of the fundamental things that both makes D2C a business model at all. That's why I think D2C is more than just a channel. I think it actually is a business model in one respect. And And also, I think one of the fundamental advantages of D2C that it scales really well, and you can run a very lean OpEx, and that only gets multiplied when you offshore. So talk to me about how you think about offshoring.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of false narrative around, if I hire staff in a different country, there's going to be X problem, Y problem, et cetera. And a lot of that's just because people run a really bad process. So there's a few ways around this. You can build your own internal process, which is what we do, or you can outsource that functionality to someone else, like an agency or something, to help you pick up those hires. Our method is simple. We use Jazz HR. This goes for a US-based hiring too, just in general. We use an ATS like that to get around posting limitations on LinkedIn and Indeed. You post a bunch of title variations, and that lets you get way more inbound applicants. And again, this applies to the US as well. And from there, we have like a test that's built into Jazz HR that we structure just to get rid of like the bottom, people who are just spamming resumes, et cetera. And then we follow like the process from the book Who, which kind of goes through how to hire people, and it's really, really good. I'd highly recommend it. Um, and that's basically the gist of it. And again, even if you need someone that's say, and you're not comfortable hiring in like a totally separate continent or something, Canada's still 25. Maybe I'm biased because I'm Canadian, but Canada's still 25 to 35% cheaper for a lot of roles because the job market isn't as competitive and our dollar is much weaker than the US dollar. On top of that, you don't have things like payroll taxes, et cetera, to deal with. So it,
But
it all
Mehtab,
adds
what
up.
if we end up with a low quality nothing employee like you know, from Canada? No,
Yeah,
I'm
the
kidding.
filthy Canadians were horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that point is so helpful, right? That like you just start by thinking about this. I know the UK is drastically cheaper as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and just talk. I remember talking to one operator there, and he was telling me about like what salaries are, and I was like, what? Like I think of London as an extremely expensive city. How come the salaries are so, whatever. And so that sort of surprised me. But yeah, I think that Canada point is great. I think the other mistake people make is that they believe that offshoring is a path only to like virtual assistant level help.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
just, and I really think part of this is because of things like accents and languages. They just have this idea that there's like it's just a subconscious bias thing. I don't think people are evil here. I just think like you just assume when it's a little harder to communicate with somebody, or they're from a country that is less economically developed or something than the US, which is like almost every country, right? Like it's like they just get this idea that that like that means you're going to get a lower quality employee. I've just found that's almost totally wrong. And it's
Yeah.
I've been really public about this with my relationship with More Staffing, who is sponsoring this episode, and who I've built my team with. That's all in the Philippines. People have deep e-commerce resumes, and one of the things that people really underrate is that by paying above market rate in the country that you're hiring in, you attract the best talent. And so this
Yep.
is one of the ways to work against any like talent drain issues. And so you end up getting really good quality people with really good resumes, and certainly that's been the case for me. I've never let somebody go from that I've offshored. And on my team, I have a team lead in the Philippines who is like incredible. I hope she works with me forever. And yeah, I'm trying to go deeper with that partnership all the time because I'm so impressed with what they bring. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this advice, and think that basically if you're in office, then you probably need to think a little differently about this. But if you're not in office, and I understand why someone would want to be in office, there's some culture value there and some of those things. But if you're not in office, like it's just like you should absolutely be thinking really
Totally.
broadly about remote. It doesn't have to be the Philippines. I've got another good friend who does some stuff in South America. You've hired in Mexico a lot, is that right?
One of our companies got rid of everyone and moved everything to Mexico entirely. There's like two
How
US
did it
employees left.
how did it work out?
Totally fine. It's great.
Yeah.
Like the culture there's much better. We're very LATAM heavy now, so like that includes Colombia as well, just because of the time zone overlap, and then a few other things. Like if the ops for that company are in Mexico, it's helpful if people speak Spanish. So um,
Yep.
it's been great. No real
Yep.
complaints. And then the other thing too is like we have some team members in India, for example, who've been educated in Australia and then they moved back to India because of immigration issues or whatever. And now you have someone who went to school in Australia but is the price of someone in India. So I mean,
It's incredible.
it's
Do
pretty great.
you speak any other languages?
Yeah, I speak Spanish. It's kind of mediocre. Very bad French. It's mandatory here in Canada.
Uh-huh.
Punjabi, which is like my native language, and then I
Yep.
speak a little bit of Hindi because they're really really similar, and
Yeah.
then just English. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Only five. Yeah. That's it.
that's it. It's
Yeah.
well, a lot of them are
Yeah.
really similar. Like they don't count. So
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. That's good. Um, are you communicating with offshore teams in English primarily or in other languages?
oh yeah, all English.
Yeah, this is another thing people I think underrate. Like just people all over the world grow up learning English, so the English is
Oh,
awesome. Like a
it's changed completely. Like my relatives, just because they grew up watching, say, YouTube videos in English now, like it's changed completely. It's like my relatives in India, for example, they all speak English, and not because they made a conscious effort to learn it, but because everyone's consuming American culture.
yeah. Yeah, and I know like in one of my first conversations with the folks at More Staffing, one of the things that their CEO was telling me, her name is Laura, she's been on my show a few times. And I've got a few sponsored episodes with them. Like those are not just like hard sells. Go listen to that and get a sense of what like those cultures are like. But the one of the things that she says is that yeah, like her kids, whatever, like they all grow up speaking English in school as well, and then
Mhm.
of course they're consuming content like you said, and so like it's like English is not really a second language for a lot of those folks, probably at home they still speak Tagalog, but like they're very comfortable in English,
Totally.
and I know that's true across the world as well. So yeah, and I think your point about Canadians is a great point. Like even Canada,
We're
they're
good.
25 to 35
Good
cheaper.
people.
Yeah, you guys are great. Canadians are great. Yeah, everybody likes Canadians, man. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay, we got a lot of other things we could go through. Some bigger ones and some smaller ones. Mehtab, what are the most important things left
I like
that
the
people can
cash one.
do?
Can we do the cash one really
Okay.
quick?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do it. Yeah.
So first thing is get a 13-week cash flow model rolling. This is helpful just so you can see exactly how the cash dynamics of your business work. You don't get caught um, being low on cash, then having to do something like take out a loan that you don't want to at like a really high rate, or just going out of business, right? No one wants that to happen. And a 13-week cash flow model, you don't have to be an accountant to learn how to run one. It's not that hard. It's painful, very, very painful and time consuming the first time. You'll get exponentially faster. It's totally worth doing. There's a few courses floating around online. I don't know how good they are, but and I know Andrew from ECF posted a free guide. So
Yeah, or just go to my website and enter your email address in the footer or in the pop up there. I have like a 4 essential
oh, even
e-commerce
better.
resources kind of thing for free. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have to be my resource. It's fine. But like, if you go and you get my little like lead magnet for free for essential e-commerce resources, one of those is a cash flow model. It's just sort of templatized, pre-built, so you can just gotta enter your numbers, and there's some guidance on there as well. So yeah, go check that out. But yeah, okay. So if you're not using 13-week cash flow and you're running an e-commerce business, you got to do it. Go for it. So that's number one. And then what should
And
people do with that?
yeah, so from there, you'll be able to understand the implication of what happens, for example, if you have better terms with vendors or you're better at managing your inventory. So one of my favorite examples is learning how far your payables can be pushed back with certain vendors. So for example, Facebook will not turn you off until you're 22 days late or 24 days late to pay a bill if you're on net terms with them. So you're not actually getting net 30 with them. You're getting net 30 plus 22 days, which is obviously a much better deal. So, and there's
Yep.
no penalty or anything for that. So you should test that. But a good, like, to understand how the
So you're
math
saying
dynamics.
so
Yeah.
you're saying if you use a Facebook line of credit,
Yep.
is that right? Yeah. Do you have some workaround way where you pay that line of credit with a credit card and push it out further? Like I
No,
know people used to do this.
you could do
Yeah.
something like with plastic, I think, but then they would charge you
Yeah.
fees and like the math would be really bad. Like the
Right.
EIR would be pretty high. But
Yeah.
um,
Let me ask you another question
mhm,
about that really fast. Your credit card already has essentially net 45 terms, depending on yeah, on average, right? That's essentially
yep.
what it works out to. Um, but of course, you also get the like cash back or the points or whatever it is like that. How do you weigh the trade off between the say 52-day terms that you're getting with Facebook versus the average of 45 plus the cash back with the credit card?
Yeah, we just look at the 13-week cash flow model of the business and what their true EIR is, like the effective interest rate that the business pays, and what their credit availability is, and what the whole liquidity stack looks like. I wrote
Sure.
another blog on this because I'm a weird loser, but it's totally free. It just details how to build your debt stack and kind of walks through some of the pluses and minuses of using certain
Okay, that
tools.
that is also I'm going to declare right now, linked in the show notes. You
Cool.
gotta put an email capture on those, Maytap. Come
I
on,
really should.
you're never going to be a big influencer if you don't if
It's
you don't
true.
get those email addresses. Come on. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the really cool thing is when you actually go and you run the math. So, for example, if you extend payables out, say 30 days, reduce inventory by 15 days, then you've reduced the year's costs for goods and services by 12%. So it's like
In
30 plus
in
15
terms of
divided by
cash,
265. Yeah, exactly. But
right?
it's like, it's pretty wild, right? Like you don't think of it. It's like, okay, how hard is it to push some things back 30 days and then, manage your inventory tighter in a better way that reduces the amount you have to have on hand by 15 days. It's not that hard. It's totally doable for most businesses, and it's a pretty big reduction in cost effectively.
Yeah. How are you getting 30-day terms with vendors or whatever? Does that go back up to the first point that we talked about,
Mhm.
where you're just putting that into those negotiations?
Yeah, exactly. Getting on a plane, going there, just walking them through how something like Share is just so much cheaper for them and like beneficial for both of us if they start
Right.
using it, et cetera.
Yeah, the notion that you can have 12% less cash tied up in your business and for very cheap financing. Yeah, this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, but it's like, man, that is like a huge, huge value for your ability to grow. And yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So again, that your vendor should be happy about that. Their bill to you is just going to get bigger if they help you do that. So
Totally.
that's good. Yeah, okay. So we talked about that. What about you have another note here: sign off on every expense, have managers walk through their quarterly expenses and justify each line item. This is a really good piece of advice. I've heard some people, like, one thing people do is they'll turn off their credit cards every single year, like just cancel them all and get new ones, and that way
Mhm.
like a bunch of your sort of software that you subscribe to or whatever will hit. Oh, your credit card couldn't process. It'll kick you an email, and then it will sort of force you to evaluate whether or not you still want that software. And it's a really fast way to sort of automated way, basically, to reduce some software bloat in your business. You have this other one, which is sign off on every expense. It's slightly different than what I just said, but tell me about the logic here.
Yeah, you can do it either way, but I think having people actually justify the expense and explain to you why it's needed um, is really, really critical because it creates the right kind of culture and the right kind of pacing going forward. And I mean every expense, like even if it's something that's like $100, they should explain it. Like, hey, why did we have to spend $100? Keep in mind, it's not just $100. It's like how much revenue did you have to bring in to create the contribution dollars to cover that $100, right? It's a lot more usually, depending on what your margin structure is like, right? Like it could be like say you're running a business at like 20, 30% contribution margin, like that's a lot of revenue you have to generate to cover for
Yeah, yeah,
$100. It's
yeah,
not just $100;
yeah.
it's a lot of revenue. So I think when you walk people through that math and explain why you're doing it, they really appreciate it. And we've never received pushback against this. People actually like it and they like saving the company money. For them, it turns into a game. Like it's fun to see where they can cut costs.
Yeah, this is not my instinct. I tend to be a little bit loosey goosey about this kind of thing. If it's like a price on if a cost on that level, but I think this is one of those things I'm just like, my instinct is wrong about. And the reason I think that is that I just hear this from good, well run companies and CEOs for a long time. Did you ever read I've mentioned this book before, about the book The Outsiders, about
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
CEOs? Yeah, it's a good
Mhm.
book. It just chronicles sort of the best performing public market CEOs over the last bunch of years, and what are they like. And one of the like obvious through lines in that is that a lot of them are just cheap. They don't have giant private jets or fancy
I'm honest with
offices or
people. I'm
whatever.
Indian. I can't pay that much in expenses. It's just, I got to be cheap. It's just the way it
Is that an
works.
Indian culture thing? Is that
Oh,
like
yeah, totally. Totally.
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Okay. Anything else that you think is like crucial to hit? We've got some stuff on AOV, which is always a good topic. Anything else?
I like the product. What do you think of the product line as a portfolio?
Oh, I love this point. Oh, go on that. Product line as a
Okay.
portfolio is so helpful.
I think too many SKUs, especially this is really, really hard when you're running a brand with a lot of SKUs, like say apparel or something. I think too often product lines and the SKUs within those product lines and the child SKUs within those products, they just end up existing for no real reason and no one knows why they exist and there's no justification for why they exist. And if you think of it as something like a portfolio of stocks and think of yourself as like a hedge fund manager or something, would you keep a stock around in your portfolio if it's just languishing and not doing much and tie up that capital? Because keep in mind, for every dollar that's not productive, you're basically losing that money and throwing it away. You're lighting it on fire, right? Um, and it's actively hurting your business, especially if you have to hold the inventory somewhere physical. You're paying for all that, and it's a huge drag on productivity, brain power everywhere, et cetera. Like ops really feels it, especially if you're on your own manufacturing or fulfillment operations. So I think getting really aggressive about looking at it like it's a portfolio, looking at what's earning the highest return, what about the lowest return, and obviously there's other considerations, right? Like you might have certain SKUs that are like the milk and bread for your company. Like you know how grocery stores they'll price staples really low to bring people in and then make money off of ancillary things like seasonings, right? Like you know why is this bottle of seasoning $7? If you're like Andrew and shopping at Whole Foods, that's what happens. We get you
I'm
on the
not shopping at
seasonings.
Whole Foods. I'm not shopping at Whole Foods.
And then So there's stuff like that, or what ancillary support does each SKU require, right? So certain SKUs, maybe you can only source it from a specific vendor, but now you're creating a whole vendor relationship that has to be managed for a SKU that maybe you're not ordering that much of, or it's not generating that much in contribution dollars, doesn't turn over very quickly, or maybe it's just a total pain in the ass to fulfill and it causes a lot of drag on ops, right? I think talking to the people actually managing the day to day in your ops, in your warehouse, if you're doing that, is really helpful here. If you're like, hey, what are 10 products just cause the most problems for you? They'll tell you and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was happening. Or you can, there's a lot of ways to do this, right? Like you can look at reviews, call the ones that are bringing in the worst reviews, have the highest breakage in transit, etc. Um, and then even looking at things like, okay, with these specific vendors for these SKUs, what are terms like? How flexible are they? How are they to work with? Are they a total pain? Should we even carry these? And again, it'll be different for every company. There'll be a bunch of factors that you want to rank that by, but I just think having a approach and doing something on a regular basis helps you get somewhere, and it will improve the efficiency of your company a lot. Because keep in mind, in e-commerce, we're taxed on things like inventory, right? You don't get to write that off as an expense. So you get destroyed when you grow, and your inventory keeps growing. Your cash position can get annihilated if you're not careful. So
Right.
watching that
And your
inventory very,
inventory is
very
an
close.
asset, not a liability, right? So
Mhm.
like it's like it yeah, when you that cost goes out the door, yeah, it's not a write-off. It's the opposite of a write-off actually.
It's
Yeah.
brutal. So
Yeah.
you have to be really, really careful and watch that closely, and you'll find that has an outsized impact on your ability to grow because of the net cash available in your business. And it's really the main failure point for any business, right? Is in e-commerce at least, is bad inventory and ordering the wrong things at the wrong time, running into supplier troubles, et cetera. So the more you can mitigate that, that's probably 70% of the risk in any inventory-based business.
Yeah, this is a really helpful point. And I think what people sort of forget is that like uh, that sort of how your company holds and sells products is the whole company in D2C. Like it just basically is the business, right? Like everything supports that basic thing. And if you get that wrong, you are in like real trouble. And I once you start thinking about products this way, I just think it generally leads to all kinds of good insights. One thing I've done sometimes for clients is I've factored in the unit economic and LTV profile plus the cost of advertising, and actually built like a ROAS target, but then actually turned that ROAS target into a return on invested capital calculation. So
Well,
you see a brand with extremely high LTV, and it's like, oh, you get 100% return on invested capital in a year. Compare that to, and it's actually better than that because of the timing of inventory payments, but it's just too annoying to do the math of
yeah.
sort of when all that would happen. So if you actually annualize though the costs of when the inventory goes out the door, and you start to do that, and you start to really see the difference between advertising product A versus product B because of the LTV profile, or getting a subscriber versus a non-subscriber or something like that, and it becomes a justification to really think differently about where you put your advertising efforts and those sorts of things, because you're just thinking about your inventory this way, right? And the comparison I always use, right, is if let's say that, I mean, 100% is extreme, right? But even if you get 50% return on invested capital, that's very good. And if you can do that a lot of times in a year, it's even better. But compare that to your index fund portfolio, right? You're going to get 8 to 10% or something on your index fund. So like it becomes a justification to go, oh, how do I make sure to spend more money against this product and move it faster because it's really high margin or high LTV or whatever it is, and that really helps. The other thing I would say, I'm actually curious if you've done this in some of your negotiations, is when you start to realize really what your hero products are, you can move away from a sort of blanket strategy about how much inventory to keep versus
Mhm.
not and when to reorder. And even in negotiations, you can start to think about like, hey, I don't need you to give me terms on everything. I just need you to give me terms on product A, because that's actually the one that I'm going to stock the most. That's going to help me grow the fastest, whatever. I got these other ones that make up 20% of my business. That's fine. But if you could just help me here, you can actually sort of like uh, maybe potentially um, uh, target the sort of areas of efficiencies in your business around the things that have outsized influence on your total performance. Now, as you're saying, you may actually want to cut the other 20% anyway.
Mhm.
That may be the ultimate implication of it. But in my experience, by like, if you start to think about getting certain products right as opposed to getting the whole thing right, it can actually help you hone in on the more specific places where you can generate better outcomes in your business.
Yeah, and that really goes into the last point there, which is the quality of revenue. I think product-led growth is always the healthiest type of growth you can have and most sustainable type of growth. So, for example, if you're selling something like if you're doubling down on a product line that's higher on LTV, you know that the satisfaction for customers is higher because they're coming back and ordering more, right? And that's a higher quality of revenue than something that's just one-off. They're not really returning because you don't have to reacquire that. Well, you sort of do sometimes, but you don't have to theoretically reacquire that customer again, and it's less. It's going to fluctuate less. There'll be more stability there. And the more stability there is in the business around revenue that comes in, the easier it is to plan, the easier it is to hit inventory forecasting, et cetera. So it all cascades and it creates much more net profit when you can be accurate with things like that.
Yep, that's awesome. People ask me with some regularity what I use to do all of my event tracking, website tracking for my Facebook ads. They wonder what third-party pixel I am using, and I am using Billy, Billy.ai, Billy.ai. That's because Billy has an incredible combination for a server-side tracking tool, pixel integration for your Facebook ads of incredible quality. Your event match quality score will definitely go up if you switch to Billy, especially from the native Shopify Facebook integration. It will go up, and it is also incredibly easy to install and use. Like within 3 minutes, you will probably have Billy working and used as your pixel on your website. It's also incredibly affordable. Most brands that I am talking to will need to sell, I don't know, between 2 and 4 more items per month with Billy's pixel to make it worth the cost. And the first month is actually only $1. So you can try it out for yourself, essentially for free. And it is really, really awesome. Server-side tracking, lightning fast, easy setup that works as well or better than any tool that I know of in the market. My clients use it. If you are looking to upgrade your Facebook ads pixel, you should go do that at Billy, Billy.ai. And if you're not looking to upgrade your Facebook's ads pixel, you are missing out, particularly, as I said, if you are using the Shopify native integration for your Facebook ads. Go to Billy.ai and go look into it, explore it today. Okay, let's see. We're running out of time here. Anything else that you think is really important? I would love to hear you talk at some point. We should just do a whole other episode on management. I've heard you talk a lot about EOS and scaling up and what's been useful to you there, but maybe that can be a subject for the next one because there's probably more to say about how to approach that than elsewhere. And I would say somebody as tactical as you is often, rarely, in my experience, also the person who is as interested in thinking carefully about operations and some of those things. But this is another like solved problem. So I think it's a good topic for a future episode.
Cool.
Anything else that's like...
Yeah, maybe the easy product expansion one. What do you think of that?
Yeah, talk about that.
Sure. So one of our favorite things to do is post-purchase surveys, which I'm sure a lot of you are running. I don't have a recommended app. We use Fairing. I'm sure the other ones are just as good. But the first question, you should change the first question in there to be something like, do you want to take a survey to potentially win a $500 gift card? And you'll see that your response, I learned this from a random Slack, someone posted it. The response rate went up like probably 8x to 12x what we were getting. So we're getting a huge amount of responses in that post-purchase survey. And it's amazing for general data, but our favorite one for product expansion is asking.
And a $500 gift card costs you like $100, right? So it's like,
yeah, exactly. And you can do that giveaway once a month or something. But anyway, so what we like to do is ask what their budget was for the purchase. So let's say they come to your website, your AOV is $80, but people are coming to your website and they actually had a budget of 120. So you're leaving all this money on the table, and that's a very bad thing. It's a good thing for you because it means there's room to grow, but it means that, obviously you're failing to capture that value. And I'd say probably 80% of the time, that's what happens. Very rarely do we see it inverse, in which case it means you probably have a really strong brand or something. But it means you're leaving cash on the table, and you need to figure out what else it is that they would be willing to pay for. So you want to then pull those customers that replied that way and survey them deeper, call them, text them. We have someone manually texting people in the Philippines to drill down and get that data because we find the response rate's much higher. Do like a manual survey that way, not expensive. And the math totally works out. So you want to think like a hotel, right? So if you're booking a hotel, when's the last time you went to a hotel website? There's only one option. Never. It's always 6 to 10 options, right? And they vary in price tremendously. Like say the base room's like $400 a night, and then the max option will be like $2,000 a night. And the reason for that is to get as much value capture out of the customer as possible. And you want to do the same thing. You want to figure out, what's the good, better, best framework for that product line or that offer, and how do I capture the maximum amount of value?
That is so helpful and thoughtful. It gets to a side point that I don't want to be too distracted on, but I've always thought people using post-purchase surveys for attribution as the main goal is silly,
Mhm.
both because I
Yeah.
don't think they're very helpful for attribution, but also even more than that, there's just such better questions you can ask. Like one we used to ask
Absolutely.
for one of my brands when I was at 4400 was, "Is this a gift?" And that helped us so much because first of all, you could tag people differently in your follow up marketing if you wanted to. Gift purchasers are really different than non gift
Mhm.
purchasers, but even more than that, it was just like incredibly helpful to think about for advertising. And you could see during different times of the year, of course, like, oh, look, 80% of these purchases are a gift. Oh, that helped us realize we're a gift brand. And what does that mean for how we think about marketing and for how we think about like how we're talking to our customers, whatever? Your question is incredibly helpful. The idea that you would actually think about how to merchandise your product line to generate basically capture as much of that wallet as somebody is coming ready to spend on your
Totally.
business. And especially if you are like a good operator building good quality products that you're proud of, right? Like you're going to delight the customer more as they find the
Mhm.
right thing for them by giving them what they're looking for at the budget that they have to pay. It's like it's there's nothing mercenary about it. It's a great way
Totally.
to like serve your customer really well and get them the things that they're looking for and add a little delight to their life. So one of the things I've actually appreciated about you on that front really fast is just like the occasional photos of wood flowers, which is one of your businesses, of just like
It's my
there's like
favorite one.
pride in the product, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
you're not just like trying, just meticulously figuring out how to get the money from somebody. It's like so many people I talk to in e-commerce are thinking about that, right? They love their product, they care about it, they care about their customers. All you're doing is just finding a way to like, sort of find the interaction between your product and the customer in the exact right spot, and
Mhm.
at the same time, kind of deliver on the value that they
And
want
at the end of the day,
ready to come get.
product's like 90% of it, right? Like you can do whatever you want in
Right,
marketing, but it doesn't really matter if the product sucks. You can only do
right,
so much. And I'm sure you've run across all these, like a few companies where they're growing just at a crazy rate with really good cash flow, and the product's just totally doing all the work, right? Like they don't even have
yep,
remarketing turned on or
absolutely,
anything like that.
right,
And
right.
they're just crushing it. You're like, oh my God, if I add just a bit of marketing secret sauce here, it'll explode. But
Yeah.
it's cool to see when a product like PMF
Yeah.
really crushes it and rips.
Yes. Yep. All right. We're out of time. That was a
Cool.
great one to end on. This was so helpful. I think this is a great
Mhm.
episode. I think people are going to love this. We'll definitely have to have you back for something else in the future whenever you got time.
Cool.
Let's make sure to send people to you. You have money that you would like to put into e-commerce businesses, if I understand correctly. Talk about
Totally.
that and talk about what kind of people should reach out to you to not only get your money, but your brain working on their business, actually adding value as an investor. Tell people where to go and what they should be looking for from you.
Cool. If you go to kartaventures.com, KARTA, and then
Link in
ventures.com.
the show notes. Yep.
Yep. We're always looking for D2C brands, and doesn't mean you can't have wholesale. Some of our brands are 60% wholesale, 70% wholesale, but predominantly like D2C heavy, or it's a main feature of the company. Um, we're happy to look at deals where you want to sell minority equity interest or control. And we do a lot of structured equity deals too. So that means you get to sell less equity and there's just like a debt component to it. That's all. We used to do more pure debt, but I'd say now we're heavier on structured equity, minority equity, and control in that order.
Cool.
So we're super
Cool.
flexible, always happy to work a deal out. And we have fun looking at businesses. So don't be shy, reach out. We're not very formal, and we get excited about looking at businesses where we can add a lot of value. So if you're manufacturing in-house, especially, that's super fun for us. I'll send my co-founder down, and he'll add all the value, and I'll sit back and go on podcasts. So.
Reap the financial rewards and
Yeah,
go on
exactly.
podcast. Yeah, great. I know that's not true. You're one of the hardest working guys in e-commerce, and it is shows and it pays off. So that's awesome. You also recently married. Congratulations about
Thank
that.
you.
That's awesome. And so yeah, man. Thanks, Mehtab. We will send people there. All of the links from this episode are in the show notes. Go chase them down and go work with Mehtab.
Thank you.
Just one of my absolute favorite people in e-commerce. So stimulating to talk to. So I hope you loved that as much as I did. I would love for you to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this episode of the show. That would be great. Share it with somebody who will get some value from it. And of course, don't forget to follow up with my sponsors, More Staffing. If you are looking to offshore some talent, like we talked about in this episode, that would be great. And Billy, BILY.ai. Go to morenow.co/AF and BILY.ai for follow up with them. That's it for this episode. Thanks as always for watching, for listening. You can email me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com, if you've got anything you'd like to say, and go find everything, including the resources I mentioned, at my website, ajfgrowth.com. I will talk to you next time.